This will probably be the most on-theme episode that we will ever film for this podcast because I am filming from my mom's car right now. And talk about natural light, I've changed the parking space twice and I don't want to do it again because I just want to start. So looking forward to film because let's face it, who doesn't overthink? Most of the people I know in my life, they overthink or they used to overthink and they've overcome it. So with that, welcome to episode 4 of the Christina Abdullah podcast. But before we go deep into this topic, I just want to specify one thing. Overthinking is not a personality trait. You often hear people saying, oh, but I'm an overthinker, I am a perfectionist. No, you are not. You are just engaging in, I can see the tripod, it keeps moving and shaking as I move, and this is going to be an issue because I move a lot. What I was saying is you are not an overthinker. You are not a perfectionist. Stop making that a personality trait. You are just engaging in behaviors and habits that are making you overthink, that are making you doubt yourself. The same way with anxiety. For example, people label themselves as an anxious person, as having anxiety. And we know that those labels become self-fulfilling prophecies. Any label brings me to an argument of if you're labeling yourself in a not so favorable way and you're self-fulfilling that prophecy, why don't you label yourself in a more positive way and self-fulfill that prophecy? But anyway, that is outside of this topic. As I was saying, labels are self-fulfilling prophecies. So if you are labeling yourself as a perfectionist, then of course you're going to engage in behaviors that are going to make you seem like you are a perfectionist, and you've taken that on and labeled it as a personality trait. And as I was saying before I digressed, the same about anxiety. You are not an anxious person. You do not have anxiety. You are just engaging in behaviors that are making you anxious. Anxious is a feeling. Anxious is not you. The feeling is separate from you. And also, we must not forget that when you are labeling yourself in this way, most often than not, it is a protection against something. So whether, let's take this, the perfectionism. You are a perfectionist. You say that you are a perfectionist. All you're saying is that you're procrastinating from doing or delivering something to protect yourself against something. Now, whether that something is fear of failure, fear of success, yes, it is a thing, or preventing judgment, you are protecting yourself from an outcome which is going to have an impact on you and or your life. You tend to get stuck in this loop where you keep thinking. You're delaying taking action because you're still gathering information. And then you get stuck in this mental masturbation. You just keep gathering information and it gives you that dopamine hit when you keep going back to something, whether that is gathering information, touching up a presentation or a course, whatever. And with the dopamine hit, you get stuck into this decision fatigue, and then you're in analysis paralysis and you end up not taking a decision ever again. So I'm looking this way for those watching me on YouTube is because cyclists are passing by. And this is very much out of my comfort zone. People watching me film. As I said, this podcast is growing with us and that includes going out of our comfort zone. So I'm just gonna keep rolling. So when you are in this analysis paralysis, of course, you're not taking any decisions. You lose momentum, and with that loss of momentum comes more self-doubt. And when you are self-doubting yourself even more, of course, you're losing self-confidence. Your self-confidence is chipping away because you're not delivering on what you're saying that you're gonna do. You're not delivering on your own promises. And this takes me back, and I say this with the utmost love. This takes me back to my fitness coaching days where, and I still hear it now, where you hear people saying, oh, I'm gonna start, I'm gonna, start getting in shape, for the lack of better words. I'm gonna start getting in shape. I'm gonna start doing it on my own. And then when I improve, I will find a coach. Make that reasoning make sense. And let me preface this by saying it's not that I don't believe that people can do it on their own. 100% people can do it on their own, and most people don't really need a fitness coach. But if you can do it on your own, you've already done it. Not been saying for the last 5 years that you're gonna do it, but you're still in the same position. So again, it takes me back. It's all related to mindset most of the time. It's not a discipline problem, it's a mindset problem. But yes, it takes me back to these days where I used to hear people saying, oh, I'm gonna do it on my own. I have so many recipes. We're all guilty of that. We're all guilty of saving recipes on Instagram, but never really sticking to those recipes or to a meal plan that we do with ourselves. And this kind of leads me on to my next point, which I believe is the most controversial opinion about success. And I'm going to leave the definition of success open here, just whatever success looks like to you. But back when I started my first business, I was told that speed is the key to success, and I believed it back then. I was new in my working on my mindset. I was definitely new to business, but I was told that speed is the key to success. And I'm not saying that speed is not required for success. 100% you need to act on your ideas, but there is no point in speeding to a direction. There is no point in speeding towards an idea if you don't know who you are. Now, you might find out who you are in the process, but it would save you so much time, so much aggro if you actually knew who you are before speeding towards those ideas. So what I'm trying to say is that identity is the key to success before speed. And you're probably thinking, how does this relate to overthinking? We're gonna get there. We will get there, but it is related. Because when you look at people who are successful, you'll get a mix, right? You'll get a mix of people who, okay, work themselves to the bone. Do we really want to be those people that work ourselves to the bone in order to be successful? Or do we want to be those people that they just attract everything to them? They know who they are, they do the work, they take aligned action, but not to the point where it drives them to the ground. They're burnt out and they don't have time for anything else in their life except this thing that they're working on. And I know you're nodding right now because we've all been there trying to make things work. And you get to a point where you're just like, but this is not how I want to live. Or you get to a point where you're like, this is not me anymore. Raise my hand. That was me. When I was constantly working on my fitness coaching business, I got to a point where I was like, this is not aligned with me anymore. And where I took the hard decision of closing it down to build my second business. So this is something I really, really want to emphasize. Whether you're starting out your own business or chasing success towards something, just make sure that your identity is ingrained, or at least you make it a point to work on your identity as you are speeding towards something. Because my question to you is, if you don't know who you are, what direction are you exactly speeding towards? Now, when we engage in behaviors that lead us to overthinking, that eventually lead us to doubting ourselves, we are doing that as a form of control, but it does not have the control effect that we expect it to have, because in our minds, when we are overthinking, we are in control, we think. But overthinking and self-doubt will destroy you. Let me explain. So I want you to think of episodes that have led you to engage in behavior of overthinking and eventually led you to doubt yourself. Most of the time, your mind is out of control. You are spiraling out of control, even though in your head you may be thinking, oh, I am engaging in that behavior as a form of control because you want to control the outcome. In reality, they are controlling you because your mind is spiraling out of control. And what happens? The more you engage in that behavior, the more you're giving it attention, the more your mind is spiraling out of control, the more that is magnified in your reality. The more you're going to feel out of control on the inside, the more you're going to look for control and security outside of you. So whether that is external validation, external approval, you are looking for security outside of you. And we know that any kind of that security is an illusion, because true security can ever only come from within. Now, the caveat to all of this, you're probably thinking, okay, how can I avoid engaging in overthinking and self-doubt? And my answer to that is that you cannot. You cannot avoid overthinking. You cannot avoid having self-doubt. But what you can do is learn how to navigate them and use them to your advantage, which I will get to that point later. But this is where it all lies. Once you learn how to navigate overthinking and self-doubt, dare I say, you will never feel not confident again. I couldn't think of the right word there, but we got there. And please, before we go into this, I just want you to be graceful to yourself and acknowledge the fact that 99% we've been asleep longer than we have been awake, and we need to treat this as a journey. So talking down to ourselves as we are improving, as we are rediscovering and rebuilding our identity, is not gonna do you any good. And yeah, I just wanted to preface that, because we're very quick to judge, we're very quick to be hard on ourselves. Instead of talking down to yourself, acknowledge your thoughts. You will get negative thoughts, you will get thoughts that will make you overthink, but instead of immediately taking them at face value, acknowledge these thoughts, treat them like, I don't know, passing cars or clouds through your mind, and acknowledge them, speak to them. Now, this is something that I do with my NLP clients. Obviously, we don't just stop there. We acknowledge these thoughts, we catch them at the root, we rewire them, and then it is a work in progress. But if you are doing it by yourself, you can just acknowledge these thoughts. The worst you can do is you, what's the word? Not brush them off, but like you push them down to the bottom, because they're just gonna keep resurfacing. You acknowledge them and then you move on. Now, the reason why it's crucial to learn to navigate overthinking and self-doubt, if you've not already gathered by now that it is so important, you probably have come to your own conclusion, but they will cloud your intuition. Call it whatever you want, intuition, inner voice. You cannot hear yourself talk, like that gut feeling, that intuition. If you are engrossed in the overthinking, you cannot hear that. And whenever you cannot hear your intuition, if you cannot trust your own inner voice, it takes us back to the point where you will always seek security, approval, validation outside of you, and you're never gonna seek that from within. And irrespective of whether you're doing all the right things, you're taking all the right steps, self-doubt will triumph all. Now we can safely move on to the part where overthinking and self-doubt can be positive. Now you're probably thinking, like, what is she on about? But earlier I mentioned how we can use overthinking and self-doubt to our advantage, and this is what I mean. Overthinking and self-doubt, they're not part of you. They are not yours. What I mean by that is that they are part of your old self or your old identity, which is comprised of your old expectations, beliefs, behaviors, assumptions, emotionally charged thoughts. That is what your old self is made up of. Now, your old self wants to stay alive, right? Like, you've been feeding your old self for however long till you decided to change, and it wants to stay alive. And the way it can do this, it is only by your external reality and even internal staying the same. So the reason why overthinking and self-doubt are positive and they can be used to your advantage is that because they only happen if your old self feels threatened. Why does your old self feel threatened? It's because your reality is changing. So when you start changing your old self, it will come out in full force with all these overthinking, with all these self-doubts, in order to keep you stuck. It will fuel your mind. Like, you can relate. You'd be like, let's say you're gonna go for a new job, and this new job is really, really gonna elevate you, right? But your current job is keeping you comfortable, but it's what you know. Even if you hate it, it's familiar to you. It's familiar to the old self. Suddenly, You are going for that interview and you're thinking, but why would they want me? Who do I think I am going for this salary? Who do I think I am going for this title? Do I even deserve this? Do you really think that the new ideal you is going to be thinking those things? The ideal you, the person that you want to step into, is already acting that role from that identity. Your old self has not caught up yet. Your old self is going to be filling up your mind with all these thoughts, making you think that you are not good enough, you are not fit for that particular job, so that your reality can stay the same and your old self can stay existing. So first things first, what you need to do is you need to dissociate from it. You need to dissociate from these overthinking, these behaviors and thoughts that make you overthink and self-doubt. See it as separate from you. Again, it is not part of you, it is part of your old self. Once you see it as separate, then you see it as positive, because as we said earlier, these behaviors and these thoughts only come up as your old self feels threatened. So it is a positive thing because it means that you are changing. So if you take those as feedback, as cues that, okay, the work that I am doing right now is actually working, because if it is not working, I would not be doubting myself, because my old self would not feel threatened. So it means that I am changing. Acknowledge them. Again, NLP can go a lot into this. You acknowledge them and then you do the work and then you move on. Perception equals projection equals experience. Now, whether you make that positive or negative, it is completely down to you. One of the things that really helped me with navigating my overthinking and self-doubt is making time to not do anything. Now, whether that is meditation, whether we all engage in different forms of meditation. Some people do walking meditation, some people do it sitting, some people do it laying, but rather than referring to it as meditation, I refer to it as literally doing nothing, because the way I do it is I just sit or lay down with my thoughts and I just let my thoughts pass without dwelling on them. And what that does, first of all, it helps you to be detached in a way. It helps you to control maybe is not the right word, but it helps you navigate your emotions. And also, it will help you listen to your inner voice more. Not only that, you are learning to sit in silence. You are learning to sit in the discomfort. And we know how difficult that is. I remember when I went to Jay Shetty's store when I was still living in Dubai, one of the things he did, he actually picked someone from the audience and closed them in a dark tent room, whatever it was he had on stage, for 15 minutes so that she can be in her own thoughts. And even she said at first she was panicking a bit and her mind was about to explode, and then everything just stilled. We are not used to being still. In fact, there was the study of Jay mentioned this as well. There was the study done of people. They were given the option whether to sit still in their own thoughts or whether to be electrocuted. They actually chose to be freaking electrocuted than sitting in silence with their own thoughts. But anyway, that brings me to my point of when you are training yourself to sit in discomfort, to sit in silence, to sit in your own thoughts, you are becoming comfortable in that silence and in that discomfort, which is usually the in-between before you step into your new self. Apart from doing this, apart from sitting in discomfort, apart from sitting in my own thoughts, I of course then work on, rewiring my limiting beliefs and rebuilding my identity. But that brings me to the end of this episode. And if you want more of these conversations, which I like to refer to them as conversations that you have with yourself, but you wish you could have with others, make sure that you're subscribed to the pod on Spotify or on YouTube, wherever you prefer. On YouTube, I will be posting some more extra videos in addition to these episodes. You're following on Instagram for the daily dose of daily life. And also subscribe to my email newsletter where I will be sending exclusive chats throughout the week. No spam, no sales, just coffee chats into your email once or twice a week. Everything will be linked down in the description below. And with that, I will see you next week.